be here is really amazing. So thank you. Before we get started, I wanted to acknowledge our corporate sponsor, which is the Mining Association of BC, also known as the Voice of Mining in British Columbia, which has made this event possible. They will be supplying one lucky guest with a lifetime supply of clean drinking water. So everybody check under your seat for a blue envelope. Anybody? No? Nothing? That's weird. Oh, well. Please put your hands together for the Poet Laureate of the Mining Association of BC, Goldie Corpelson.
Thank you, Keir. Thank you to all of you for being here. I appreciate it. This is a great opportunity to speak to people, and a live stream is happening. I didn't know about this live stream. My IT department at the Mining Association has told me about them. We've been against them for quite some time. However, we have found a way, for the Mining Association has found a way to actually mine live streams. And so we've got our IT department on that, and now we're all for them. So it's great. I'm glad to be here. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm feeling a little off. As a poet laureate, I get to do a lot of gigs all over the place. And this weekend, I was doing a lot of DMT at a forest in the burn. This weekend, sponsored by the Mining Association. So we were at a mine, we just had the rave going, and the DJ was playing a lot of, what is their name? Midnight Oil remixes. So that was a lot of fun, but I've been up a lot. And but this morning I woke up this morning and then flew, I think, helicopter all the way into town. There's that helicopter pad over there by the C bus, got on there and just got here like 45 minutes ago. But, you know, this morning was so gorgeous because, and it happens more than once, and I'm so happy for it, but the sunrise, it often brings me bird song. But this morning, all I heard was the insatiable blubber suck of a vampire empire addicted to tar sands and dark money integrity. Oh, it's so good. You know, that bluster that covers up the world in dark horse hair mascara. It's so good, and I love it, you know. I just can't get enough. I want to eat every ounce of its oil. I want to grind every ounce of its goop over and over. I can't get enough. And yes, because I want to share it with you. I go in and I want to share it with you. I want to give it to you. All the oil, all the rocks, all the mining. I want to give it to you. I want to share it with you. And that's sort of the message I got this morning staring at the sunrise. And it was so delightful, so invigorating. And also, so I had a little message, and I just wanted to share that anecdote this morning because I didn't even go to sleep. I stayed up all night just to catch that sunrise. I was such a state. But we had some of our folks, they put together a proposal at our last board meeting, and our AGM, I guess, and I wanted to share it with you. So after all the consulting and all the focus groups and that sort of stuff, they came up with this sort of new policy, and the future is friendly. That's the message. Maybe you could. The future is friendly. The future is friendly. Children are the future. Children are the future. You know, cuddly, wuddly climate change. Cuddly, wuddly climate change. The future is friendly. The future is friendly. Children are the future. Tomorrow's in a diaper filled with yesterday's shit. Tomorrow's in a diaper filled with yesterday's shit. The future is friendly. The future is friendly? The future is friendly, if a little stinky. Now, the future is friendly because they be, say be, the future is friendly. They be, say be, the future is friendly. Children are the future. Children are the future. Fuzzy wuzzy forest fires. Fuzzy wuzzy forest fires. The future is friendly if you don't think about it. The future is friendly if you don't think about it. The future is friendly if a little smoky. The future is friendly. They be, say be, the future is friendly. They be, say be, the future is friendly. The past is tense. The past is tense. The past is tense. It keeps on repeating. It keeps on repeating. Genocide after genocide after genocide after genocide. I mean, the future is friendly. The future is friendly? The future is friendly, if a little deadly. They be, say be, the future is friendly. They be, say be, the future is friendly. Children have no future. They be, say be, the future is friendly. Children have no future. They be, say be, the future is friendly. The future is friendly? No worries. No worries. It's all good. Perfect. Perfect. So that's sort of the company's plan for the next little while. And we just wanted to share it with you now that we're live streaming and mining the live stream. We wanted to connect with you all and share it with you. And thank you so much for having me here. I am Goldie Corpelson, the Poet Laureate of the BC Mining Association. And now I welcome your panelists for this afternoon's program. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Goldie. Always a treat. And on a completely unrelated note, those labor organizers in Latin America actually shot themselves. Rivers are overrated, and the Eritreans are lying about the slavery and torture. Okay, all right, let's get this thing started. So, look at this. Get this out of the way.
I'll take it. How do we follow that up?
It's gonna be tough.
You're not gonna make us like stand up and like do something off the top. That was amazing.
Spoken word from
Advice.
Tony Chamas. Yeah, let's go.
So, yeah. What do you think? Do you want to start this off? Should I start it off?
Well, I'll kick this thing off by just saying hi, everybody. It's really great to see so many people show up in the flesh for a physical event that is also hybrid. So, you know, put your hands together for Open Mic for making this happen. This is not a fake sad thing. This place won't be here in a month, and so I found that out recently. Yeah, I found out about this place recently, but it's kind of just like the moment you find something cool, you also find out it's going to go away. And so real life spaces that host real life events, but then also ones that are doing cutting edge work on the frontier of IRL and streaming on Twitch or on YouTube or whatever, they pop in and out of existence and out a lot quicker without the support, love, and care of, you know, local community people. And so they are looking for like another venue that they're going to hopefully build, and there's possibilities, but you know, we never know. And so I'm thinking a lot about the fragility of these kinds of spaces because we found a lot of them along the way on our international tour. And so I'll just introduce myself and then hand it over by saying I'm David McKerracher, the founder of Theory Underground. This is my wife, Anne.
Anne, hello.
Yeah, we've toured the country and world from the U.S. coast to coast through Canada and Europe over the last 3 years, promoting conversations like this. And I'm not really sure what this will be like just yet, but it's all been made possible by Keir here. So yeah, thanks, Keir.
Yeah, I'm Keir. I live around here, but I almost never leave my house, so I haven't done something like this in a long time. So it was really great once I knew that these two were coming to town from Idaho and Tony was in town from Toronto all at the same time. It was a no-brainer to put something on like this. Yeah, what else to say? I have a newsletter called Recovering Anarchist. There's a podcast that goes along with that. I like to think about social norms, ideology, and morality on the left. And yeah, I think that's it for now.
I'm Tony. I run the podcast One Dime Radio and the channel One Dime, which was far older than the podcast, and I didn't even show myself till like started the video podcast, so like 2 years ago. Unlike Dave, I've not been on many live events.
And this is the point, dear listener, where the backup recording there at the venue tanked out and we lost the rest of the video and audio that the venue was recording is no longer in existence. At one point, though, later on in the talk, when I realized they were having technological issues, I whipped out my phone and I started a backup recording on that. So we do have like the final 25 minutes. It definitely skips over a lot of the political, economic, technological, and media critique that we engaged in. However, you will be happy to know that yesterday I brought my fellow speakers back together and we had a conversation over Zoom that was recorded that I am adding to this video. So what you heard was the opening of an event. You missed the majority of the event. You now get to hear the close of that event. And then after that, you'll get to hear some content that has not been heard anywhere else from the four of us. And so, yeah, strap in and enjoy.
But in all seriousness, what can actually happen is by, getting overly active in something that is not going to yield much change, you are actually accelerating the process by which you burn out. And you might actually, in the long term, be less active because that's often what happens. You've seen it a lot, you've experienced it. And I talk about it in this video that some of y'all may have seen called Contained Opposition, or it's called Controlled Opposition.
Hands up if you've seen it. Hey. All right, good. We got a couple of people.
Yeah, that video is about that, which is like, no, it's silly to think of it like, oh, post-duopoly is just the party, so you shouldn't vote. You should just go on the streets, smash the machine like Tom hated it, the SDS, because that worked.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's silly because the post-duopoly is also at the level of activism. Like, it's not just that institutionalized politics is co-opted, it's radical politics is where it says some people still miss this message from the video. And I was like, oh God, I need to just do a follow-up because there's some people who thought, okay, yeah, that's why peaceful protest is stupid. And that real protest is like something that's a threat to the system. And by threat to the system, they think just means like more cops coming in to, restore the order. That means it's a threat to the system.
Oh.
So that's part of the duopoly is what you're saying.
Yeah, could you break it down a little bit for those there's a few people in the room that didn't see the video essay. Could you break down what is it? What is this? How does it work for you? What is this contained opposition thing? How does it actually work?
So everyone here has heard of Michel Foucault. Kind of like the opposite of one of the things he said. There's this phrase I always hear from activists, from professors, who it's where there's power, there's opposition. And they say this as if there's that's a reason to be hopeful, and that all power is not really that powerful, and that there'll be opposition to it anyway, and that eventually it'll crumble. And some people take that as an impetus to resist. And I mean, Foucault himself is kind of all over the place. We thought the Iranian Revolution was going to be a great idea, and we saw how that turned out. Wow. And I kind of flip it on its head, which is where there is great power, like a stable system, a system that's actually very strong and very difficult to overthrow. It's one in which that allows opposition. It encourages it, in fact. It's the opposite of that. It's not when there's power, it's not that there's opposition. That's like some dialectic that you could, feed into to exploit and overthrow. It's, in fact, a strong system allows and is comfortable with opposition. It doesn't care. It's like George Bush, as you mentioned. He'll go and say, well, yeah, it's great that we have the protests. That's why we need to bring more of this to Iraq. And that's a sign of stability. It's like power is not when you have to crush opposition. But real powerful regimes are not the ones that, have to like shoot down every protest, poison every journalist or whatever. Those are very like weak regimes. Like North Korea, that's going to fall when China stops finding it useful. Putin is Putinist regime is probably going to fall apart when Putin dies. We see, the Iran regimes on the verge of falling. The Soviet Union, which everyone thought was so powerful, to the point where American foreign policy statesmen like Kissinger thought it was just a reality we should accept and work with. No, they all felt like dominoes because they relied on hard repression. The societies we have, for better or for worse, actually in fact thrive off of allowing opposition, and that's just testing your terrorist strength. So some of the idiots like Curtis Yarvik who are getting very popular who think, the problem with democracies that's not stable, that it's unstable, but the instability precisely is kind of strength, in that regard. And that's why, having a lot of freedom of speech, but not a lot of institutionalized democracy to actually use your power, the kind of traps or, controlled opposition. I call it contained opposition because people think controlled opposition is this thing of you think of CIA-backed groups and everyone likes to accuse each other of being a Fed. And it's no, we don't need Feds because people are too stupid and they contain themselves. They self-marginalize. Because there's no barrier to entry. Think about it. To be an activist in a repressive regime where you actually get arrested, a real fascist regime, not Donald Trump's, activist regime, you get arrested and you might just get chopped dead. Yeah,
You're dead.
And in that context, the people who do oppose do so very carefully with a lot of tact, a lot of planning, and only people who have a lot of balls and a lot of brains. Anyone can go protest now, so the barrier to entry is super low. So often, if you just allow it, the free market will work itself out. People will protest, then you'll have influencers who are, want to make that their personalities, and they'll sell the kind of echo chamber media that they can go consume and have these little echo chambers of activists in the free market of activists. So that's just a way to summarize it.
Yes, perhaps. Yeah, I think it's interesting because I do think that a lot of young people that get into activism, there is an earnest desire there. It's not necessarily a cynical action, but that also doesn't mean it's effective. And I also think I experienced police violence at the G20 in Toronto in 2010, and so did almost everybody that I went with. And some people will leave forever after something like that happens to them. And so, yeah, this idea that, we'll just throw more and more bodies, at the police. So it's just a really high cost to that. And so I think, I remember the first time I saw someone calling themselves an anarchist, in their Instagram bio. And I was really shocked by that because when I was an anarchist, I didn't have my real name or my picture at all on the internet. And, you could do this back then, took the batteries out of our cell phones when we had our meetings. And I did know people that were surveilled who did freedom of information requests on themselves. I should do that on myself as well to see what's going on. But yeah, I think that's the interesting thing about paranoia and the paranoid style of politics is at 20 years old, I find out that my journalist friend was being trailed. And also I had several interactions with undercover police during the summit itself.
groups had been infiltrated like a year previous. The Vancouver Media Co-op has been infiltrated. Of course, the anarchists in Ontario were. You can't put anarchists.
This is once again where we lose recording. This time the recording was lost because my phone was interrupted. So yeah, I will continue with the part that we do have once I finish sharing a message that comes from all of my time in the field, on tour, as well as from streaming, from recording. You can never have enough backups. In the future, I think it's worth encouraging people ahead of an event like this to whip out their phones and make their own backup recordings. For real. If you are attending events, just whip out your phone, do a backup recording, and you can always delete it afterwards. But it's just really useful. It's really helpful. And yeah, you never know when the technology is going to fall apart. This was kind of a shaky situation. We can't blame the guy who was running the show because it really wasn't his fault. It's not his equipment. He was using someone else's equipment. Their place is in shambles. It's all falling apart because their venue won't exist in a couple of weeks. And so, you know, they're just making do. And with this sort of DIY movement emerging, it's just so important that everyone take some agency and help with the process. And so, yeah, everyone should always have backup recordings going. This is a fantastic reminder of that. And my final note for now is just this. Before we continue on with the end of the recording, the part that I do have, I just want to say, Kira was able to make all of this happen. And she was able to make it all happen being totally stretched thin by all of the things that she's already doing all of the time. Just imagine what you could do. Assuming that you're a busy person, you can still do a lot. Assuming you're not a busy person, though, you could do so much more. If you're interested in organizing local events, having speakers from the emerging underground theory scene come to a city near you, if you are interested in orchestrating events like this, if you're interested in trying to find funding, spaces, how to promote this kind of stuff, anything like that, I'm here for you. I will be a resource for you. We're going to develop a handbook of the basic things you need to know and do to make these kinds of events happen. And I think that the more people who feel empowered to do as Keir did in making this event happen, the more it will help all of us grow as speakers, as writers, as thinkers, both online and off, which I think is very important. It's so important to break through the screen and into local spaces. Lots of really great stuff came from that. Okay, now with that PSA out of the way, we're going to turn it over to some of the conversation that we had a few days after when we did a Zoom call. And so we'll play that, play some sections from that, and then close this video out with the actual end of the live event. So yeah, Keir, what did you say about that podcast? What was your reflection on what it felt like to all having collaborated elsewhere and in other avenues? In this case, collaborate in something that was at least apparently hybrid and for a pretty good live turnout.
Yeah, it was pretty trippy to have the internet turn into real life, both by having you all in my city, and then also as people came in, we were like, how did you find out about this event? And people were saying YouTube and Instagram and, subscribing to my newsletter. And almost no one I knew in real life came. It was almost all new people from the internet. And that felt pretty special that people are willing to come in person. And I think I was really blown away by just how highly engaged the audience was. People were taking notes, and people stuck around afterwards to have a conversation. And all of this was happening in this hacker space, this underground bunker, in a building that's going to be torn down soon. So it felt like the right place to be talking about all of this.
Yeah, the beginning of it had a surprise performer opened for us, and so there, we've been going for that sort of underground music analogy here as long as Theory Underground has been around, and that event that we're all coming from, that we just did a couple of days ago together, was the most like a real good show back in the day. And even with a good opener who, as the visiting touring band or whatever, it's like, oh, this person's really, really great. I love this artist. We would have never known about this person otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, we were really lucky to get sponsorship from the Mining Association of British Columbia, and they sent out their poet laureate to entertain us, and he did a bang-up job.
Right. Yeah, it was a cool space to be in. It encapsulated that underground feeling. For those of you who weren't there, I just have to set the scene that, like, it smelled so strongly of weed in there. So we were all maybe even just like a little high and didn't realize it, and that, so we'll have to channel that energy. No, but it was cool. And it was funny, where I was sitting in the chairs, like, I could see all the screens on the wall, and it was almost as if I was like watching, how like there's the joke where it's like Subway Surfers, it just has to play on a screen for like Zoomers and Gen Alpha to be able to pay attention to, like, I was basically just getting that, like all these like video game demos were playing, and like, so yeah, it was just a cool nifty space, and it was cool to be there in person and like be in that environment. But it's also great to be talking again so soon after it while everything's like fresh.
I was saying it was a cool venue because it was like a very arcade, underground, stoner, anarchist bomb shelter. That's what it felt like. It was pretty cool. But yeah, this was my second live event encountering people who watch me in real life, and it's very strange. I'm not used to it. The first time I did it was at my friend J-Rag, the YouTuber J-Rag, and a bunch of other YouTubers like Archad and people like that, where we did a sort of thing called the Anti-Clinker Rally. And that was like the first time I encountered like offline people online. And so this was the second time where like I'm one of the, 4 main people who are like, people essentially went to see. So yeah, it's, I'm not as like used to it as Dave and Ann are, or maybe not even as used to it as you are, Kier. So it's like, it was funny. Someone actually asked very earlier on, one of the first people to get there asked for a photo. That's never happened to me. The guy who was in my Discord. And it's just very strange. It's just very odd.
6 of them have viewing parties where they watch our stuff. Right. That was to me probably the most incredible thing, was discovering, oh, this person that I talked to after the show, and that person, and that person. Oh, wait, they all know each other. And then they're all like, yeah, we all watch your stuff together. We all go over to his house and we put it up on the TV and we watch it. I was like, oh my God. So that was pretty cool. But, well, this will be our segue into saying it was a special thing that now only the people who were there really got to be a part of. And that's also one of the things from back in the day, was like, you go to a show and it was amazing. Well, sorry, you would have had to be there. And in reality, that is how it works every time. You can go to something that is recorded and it's going to be completely different than the recording. And it's still good that the recording is available, but it's never as good as actually being there if the people are genuinely participating and if the performers really bring it. And so anyway, yeah, Kira said that one of the things that she discovered was that we all had great podcast chemistry. And I think part of it was just the feeling of like attentive participants and interfacing with them. Like I was tracking the faces of the people in the audience, and outside of our one heckler, I thought we had even that's a sign of participation. I think even that was just excitement, and so we felt the energy in the room. But with that said, I thought let's get back together while it's still fresh in our minds and share something along the same lines. We're not going to repeat ourselves. We're not going to copy paste stuff that we said that would feel canned. But we could talk about the general theme, which was cultivating potential in the shadow of the machine. And I thought I'd turn that over to Kier first, since you kind of put the whole thing together. And then, I want to hear from Anna and Tony.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, a place for workers with earbuds who are tired of letting others read and think on their behalf, slipstreaming our way into an understanding of the situation that short-circuits the deadlocks of our moment.
Yeah, when I was working on the poster design, the word potential kept sticking out to me. And I even thought about maybe changing it because potential always makes me think of the human potential movement, right? This idea that The Secret by Rhonda Byrne is a good example of the mentality where all the obstacles and barriers in your life are only there because you think they're there, and you are capable of literally anything if you can sort of get out of your own way and cultivate the right mindset. And this type of thinking, it's everywhere, right? Like one of Trump's biggest inspirations is Norman Vincent Peale. The mind is a fertile field is the line from Peale I always remember. But you also see it all throughout DEI, for example, right? Because it really has to do with this consciousness raising and the idea that in order to change the world, we must first change ourselves. And, there's probably something to that. Like we have to be able to, treat each other decently and communicate and kind of have these baseline skills in order to work together. But at the same time, it can very easily turn into this sort of myopic exercise where people think that they are doing politics when really they're just sort of engaging in these mind games with themselves and with others, thinking through, who is the most oppressed or who has the right to speak on what or who should lead what. And sometimes that ends up meaning that nobody leads and nothing much happens.
Yeah, so I was worried that this was just going to turn into like a bash the left all day thing, which like all of us, that's kind of like a big point of our commonality is like critiques of the left, but from a point that's quite like sympathetic to a lot of the ideals, at least on paper, like social justice and inequality and all that. But I thought it was very productive. Like it was a good discussion. You say that the theme was like the machine and the cyborgification of humans. That's definitely like a big part of it, at least in terms of recent discussions. But I think like a big theme was also just sort of what does it mean to be non-binary politically in today's day and age, right? Like the post-duopoly theme. And I think that was neat. And the people who we should maybe say like the type of people who came to the event, it's not everyone who you would expect. I mean, some people who were like communists, but were fed up with the left also.
and are interested in these sort of things. Funny, remember the one friend group who was watching us on their TV, and they said that they as a friend group, they watched less stuff like Theory Underground and One
Yeah.
Dime. That's kind of cool. That's a fun thing to do with your friends. Watch YouTube
Right.
videos. Only all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think anyone who watches Theory Underground or One Dime and has kept up with at all like any of the stuff that we've done in the last year or has ever read Kier's Substack would like, unless they wanted to like mess with us or heckle us or just be like, oh, what are these guys really about? Like, yeah, I think they get it, even if some people still more strongly identify with the left. I think, yeah, all of us being, whether we had, like would say post left or just having our experiences with a certain brand of leftist activism, trademark, um, leads us to thinking very differently about what it means to cultivate potential and cultivate our communities outside of just the rah rah social justice kind of way that, in one way or another, we all have some sort of experience with. And so, yeah, I love that kind of joined us and brought us together.
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about after was how interesting it was that a good portion of those people are actively engaged in politics, whether it's more reformist or revolutionary, are still, part of some kind of left. But none of them came trying to cancel us, and none of them were just looking for a quick gotcha at any point. Even our heckler was looking for a good faith conversation. And so it's like, no, we actually had a fantastic turnout of serious people. And then that makes me wonder, like, well, what is it that would make a person who's actively engaged in politics want to hear from someone who is so put out with their politics? And the simple answer is people who do politics have better reason to be sick of it than anyone else. We're talking about, and this is kind of how I've been framing it recently, what animates us, what actually gets us out of bed in the morning, what actually gets us doing things. It is because we care about the world. It is because we want to see change. And that is at the same time our line of criticism is like, none of this stuff that people are wasting their time on is actually going to pan out in anything but burnout for the overwhelming majority of people, and maybe a career here and there for some other people, right? And so, yeah, I was just thinking about, like, what is this doing for those people who are so actively doing things? They turn to us, and that's so interesting. And it's a very loose we here because we all have different flavors and assumptions at work. But speaking for Theory Underground in particular, I guess I am pretty used to TU being a place of post burnout, not people who just burnt out, but people who are kind of like they're sublating their previous activity as well as the burnout into some new form, into some new era, and using a good dose of theory, critical and wholesome, to do so. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think I have like some kind of optimism maybe about the kinds of audiences that we are cultivating here, just coming from that.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think maybe we were having similar or compatible thoughts afterwards, because I was wondering, like, could someone walk away from the event, thinking that we're saying, like, give up, drop out, go, hang out with your family and, forget about it because there's nothing we can do here. I don't think so. I don't think you could have come away with that. But in case anybody did, like, I think there actually is so much hope among us. And even like out of the event, I had two different people reach out to talk about like organizing events or like putting on a community thing. And so I'm putting those people in touch with people, and, maybe some cool stuff will come out of that. Like, I think that, as much as it can feel like we're at this impasse where it feels almost impossible to create any sort of structural change, like, we really do have to keep in mind that the impossible occasionally has this way of coming true. And I have the utmost respect for people who continue to try, and we need that, because I think sort of succumbing to a hopelessness and a helplessness and dropping out and removing ourselves is kind of ceding the ground to, people that do not have the best interests of just regular ass people in mind. And I think there's a way to push back, even though we've lost our union halls, even though we entertain ourselves at home alone instead of gathering the way that we used to. Um, I'm not ready to give up yet. And I hope that that comes through as well.
Yeah, I think that's an unfortunate symptom of the machine, and we can get into like all these different meanings of the machine. Specifically, I think like the corporate capitalistic duopoly slash monopoly media kind of machine that is just churning out this content of all the bad stuff going on and what the hate ink of it all, just in the sense that it's manufacturing this hatred and these narratives about the extremes on kind of each side of the left right duopoly that just makes people like think the world is falling to pieces, and it's so bad, and just like this doom and gloom kind of attitude comes for it. Yeah, it feels very inhuman, just the way that they're so seemingly detached from the reality around them, just again living in like a affluent upper middle class neighborhood with a roof over their heads and like able to afford the things that they need and the things for their health and all of that all of that stuff. That's how I've always felt when people want to just talk about, oh, all the terrible things, and oh, the system, oh, we've got all this systemic racism, oh, we've got all of this and that. And it's like, yeah, if you actually look outside and really kind of take inventory of the things that are going on around us, it's like, well, is it really as bad as we're letting the content and the algorithms just make us think it is? Again, the machine, the system, like to keep us so low and to keep us almost blinded from the fact that there are real ways forward. There are real ways of cultivating potential. There are people trying to do real work and trying to make real change that isn't just going to leave them feeling burnt out or resentful.
Yeah, there's a big part about I think you said something important when I forget who said it, but when you said that people who think that doing something is better than doing nothing, and sometimes like there's an expectation it'll lead to a career. And I think that's the most toxic part of this hating duopoly is the kind of industrial complex of the two political ideologies or the two political sides, right? Uh, what's overlooked is the leftist industrial complex. We all know very well the right wing one, like Fox News. It's pretty well understood at this point. But like, and the liberal one, CNN, MSNBC, but the leftist, like independent, quote unquote, leftist media, because the thing is there's very different incentives at play. Like some people get into, left-wing activism, left-wing politics, and they actually do make a career out of it. But that changes their incentives dramatically a lot of the time. It gives them the incentive to like stoke hope when there actually should be more criticism. It's an incentive to tell people what they want to hear because you now have like literally mouths to feed who you will suffer financially if you go against a lot of their prejudices. So you have like, yeah, these echo chambers, and the people who are independent from the corporate duopoly, like they're part of the duopoly too. This is very true of like BreadTube. It's true of like left-wing media, even the ones that are into the, like, for example, I have a family member who I won't name, but watches Democracy Now all the time. And Democracy Now is usually better than like MSNBC. It's ostensibly like leftist, right? But nonstop, all it is every time, it's talking about like ICE raids and like talking about a person getting beat up by the police. It's just like nonstop stuff that is just like anti-Trump, to the point where if you listen to that, you will think literally like we're in a fascist regime, and that the thing to do is to go and like protest and get yourself in danger by like throwing yourself at ICE people. It's a really bad situation. But in response to what we're kind of saying about this post-duopoly, some people will get the easy impression that like, are you just saying to tune in and drop out? And part of, I think the tricky thing is how do you like admit that we don't have it figured out, and that there isn't like a clear, correct political path without dropping out completely out of politics and going into some whatever the people in the 70s and 80s did. They did rock and they did punk and stuff like that. I won't speak for everyone else here because I'm curious how you guys view this, but my goal is in some ways to at least form or help produce a new political synthesis with others, right? And that's kind of why I'm working in various traditions and synthesizing my own thought. And I don't expect my thought to be the movement or anything like that, but to inspire people across various political lines to something new in our context. And for me, I would say it's kind of something that is like moderately culturally conservative, but economically left wing. It's probably could be described as socialistic. That's the direction it's taken anyway. But I won't speak for everyone else here. So this maybe sum up the question is like, is post-duopoly just a kind of pause on politics? Because we said it's not an escape from politics, or can it be a road to a new political synthesis, which is more my project, I would say, but I won't speak for others.
Yeah. I'm glad you're all kind of circling in on post-duopoly, because it did come up, and I think I was asked point blank by Keir towards past the midpoint, maybe to really unpack that for people. And I went into how people say that half the country is like this and half the country is like that. 50% of Americans don't vote. No one that I am surrounded by who keeps talking about what people are like brings that fact up. They never bring it up. It means nothing to them. It just doesn't clock for them. But I think that it's cognitive dissonance and like a really strong case of denial that honestly throws such a wrench into their whole worldview, where it's like they want to just believe that there's two kinds of people. There are Democrats and there's Republicans. And then, the Republicans have a problem with their extremist fringe. And then the Democrats have a problem with their extremist fringe. And both sides need to probably rein in their extremist fringe. But every once in a while, that fringe has a point. But that's basically what people think about politics, in the United States. And then, of course, there are third parties. We were talking about it afterwards. Even in countries that have a lot of parties, if they've been influenced by the duopoly to the extent that, maybe they consume U.S. media and they think in reference to these terms, the framework is still this left-right framework. And then people will sort of clock a political party in relation to this. So they'll say, oh, it's center left, or it's a single party. It's a single issue party. They only focus on this one thing, but it's kind of a mixture of left and right, or they'll say it's left, or they'll say it's right. So you can't get outside of this left and right framework. And maybe it's impossible. Maybe this is such a primordially deep in our bones kind of analogy that it's never going to go away. Obviously, we could think back to times in history where it wasn't present, but maybe Humpty Dumpty's been broken. There's no putting him back together again. This is the world in which we live, perhaps. But if it's a holding position, if it's a space to breathe, if it's just a time to do theory and to kind of recoup, and then try to get a more clear-eyed, sober take on the situation, challenge some of our own assumptions, then that would be kind of what Tony was proposing as the one. And if it's the other, what would it look like? And in my final days of Theory Plea, right before I closed down shop, I did a stream back in 2020 when I was talking about how if there was a broad working class party, or a party that at least purports to serve the broad working class, it would have progressive and conservative elements represented, because conservative and progressive elements are really elements of the human heart, of the brain, and of, pretty much everything in the world. Like a car, when you push the gas pedal and then you push the brake, that is, analogous to progress versus conservation, or at least caution, right? And so when we're talking about driving a political economy and you want to accelerate on one side, well, yeah, but you got to be hitting the brakes on other sides. So you got to go around things. It's not just like an infinite freeway in space with no obstacles, and we could just constantly go faster and faster, right? Maybe, but obviously capital wants us to think otherwise. Capital wants us to think that we could just accelerate faster and faster forever, right? It wants us to think that we could just become these cyborgs and it will be more or less the same as it's always been, which is problematic, and we'll never have utopia, but it'll be what it's always been. And the issue is that there are genuinely good things in humanity worth preserving, right? And so preserving and progress, I think that these two things can be dialectically synthesized 100%. But how do you get there? And especially with the possibility for some kind of a large scale structural movement, when anybody who becomes slightly aware of any of the things that we talk about across all of our different platforms, then will usually say, well, we just have to not do culture. We just have to focus on class. When that has been the old left solution for over 100 years, and it doesn't work, right? So if the new left focuses on culture too much, it focuses on a specific kind of culture. And if if the old left doesn't want to focus on culture, it's saying it's because, well, that's the right versus the left, and what we do is just for the working class. For me, post-duopoly, whether it turns into an actual kind of politics, or if it lays the ground for it, either way, there's a period of time in which I think it's important to organize with other people who aren't just saying, oh, I'm post-duopoly, so I don't look at the culture war, I ignore the culture war, I just focus on class. And instead saying, no, people who are sick of their own side and sick of the other side. It's being sick of both sides. It's not saying like, oh yeah, the left, yeah, but I'm still just fundamentally, I hate the right. No, it's being over this lesser evilist thing where both sides constantly require the other to be its worst possible version.
It's just really frustrating. Like, I remember there's this one YA writer, I think she's Chinese and French, and she got canceled because she wrote this fantasy book that included sort of an exploration of slavery, and there was an American sort of backlash to the book. I think the book got canceled, although there may have been more development since I heard about it. But for example, like the idea that anything written in fiction about slavery can only ever be about the transatlantic slave trade, because slavery has never happened anywhere else in any other, place in the world. It has never been different. And I mean, it's not like it's continuing right now, right? Like, I find that just so frustrating. And it's just tough for me to like not just see these like weird professional mind games that people that are, striving to become part of the upper middle class are playing with each other around language, right? Like in order to like be like a member of good standing, like within this sort of PMC social justice space, like not only do you have to have all the right language, but it's always changing. And so whatever was like the correct language last year isn't anymore. And I think I can't remember which group this was, but there was a group in Toronto. It was like an Indigenous solidarity group of some sort. And someone got kicked out for using the word native. And not in a derogatory way. Of course, they came to an Indigenous solidarity event because they care about Native people. But using the word native, which is often what people are using for themselves, that was just like a horrific, terrible thing that they did. And they were like not included in the group going forward. Like this kind of bullshit, I don't know. It just like at this point, I'm pretty happy to be like, you know what? I'm gonna leave that to people that are like fighting over professional jobs. Like I'm not. And so it's kind of just not my business, except that, people write to me and tell me these just like insane stories of like struggle sessions in their workplaces at nonprofits or arts orgs or universities. So it really does still matter. It still affects people's lives, but I almost just want people to like try their best to like grow some armor in those situations. I know it's easier said than done, but like it's just so rarely that these language games, like if you have two people and like they're in the same sort of educational class, like it just feels so disingenuous to be like, oh yeah, you must hate indigenous people. That's why you use that term. Or like, oh, you must hate people of color. Yes, that is like the most likely way to read what you're saying, right? Like the constant like bad faith readings of each other. I don't know. It would be funny if it couldn't like ruin people's lives.
And some people will try to refute this by saying, oh, well, people who complain about these kind of woke tendencies, they just really are revealing that they don't care about these issues. Like, oh, you don't care about indigenous issues, you don't care about LGBT, and that's why you tend to dismiss this. But I would say it's like, as you're saying, an attitude. The wokeism is this kind of mode. It's really like part of the PM's mode. And a good example of that is like they've wokeified Palestine, which is one of the issues that was very, is still very near and dear to my heart. Like, and I, I've known about it since I was a kid. But like, I'll give you an example. Like, I recently interviewed Rob Ashton for the NDP, who, tends to be the leader I like the most right now, running for the NDP out of them. And I saw like at least two comments that said, I can't vote for Rob because he doesn't have the best stance on Palestine. And it's like, he doesn't have a principled stance on Palestine because not even because he said anything like bad. It's because he didn't like attend some event that Avi Lewis or the other candidate attended. And it's basically like he doesn't have this position on Palestine. And I've heard this actually said about other people before, like other figures who I've had on my pod to talk about stuff that is not Palestine, but for some reason, like they're held to the fire over this issue. And it's like, this is Canada, a third party who's like not in fourth place in the elections, has no prospect of political power anytime soon. Why do you care about what he thinks about Palestine? It's not like he's going to do anything. He just needs to win. And it's like, I care about this issue, but they wokeify it. And that's what I mean by wokeifying it. It's like, you have to think the correct thing, And yeah, annoying thing, and it's connected to LARP because it's easy to think correct things, right? It's easy to say I'm not a liberal. Those are liberals. I'm a leftist. But that's a, you know, that's what you're saying. It's like, who gives a fuck what you say? It doesn't say anything about what you do in practice, right?
It's interesting because, like, I don't know, there are these, first of all, yeah, the Enlightenment seems to be currently rejected by everybody, right? Everybody's unhappy with it. The left and the right are both unhappy with it. And I think it's kind of fascinating, like, that there are all these kind of signs of like trying to go way back, like hunter-gatherer back, right? Like, we've got paleo diets. We've got like a lot of anarchists are super into herbalism. There's like a free birth movement, which is not traditional midwifery. It's the idea that a woman doesn't need any help, any expertise whatsoever. Her body will just know what to do. Raw milk. We've been boiling milk for hundreds and hundreds of years. So there do seem to be all of, I mean, and neo-paganism is definitely another one. And you've got like white supremacist versions of that, and you've got social justice versions of that. There is this like longing, and I like that Samuel Longcar will point out that like we're sort of forced into this like endless choice, right? Like, we have to choose our religion, we have to choose where we live, we have to choose our jobs, like it, and it never really ends. And of course, it would be easy to say like, well, what would you want to be, you know, stuck being a peasant your whole life because that's how you were born? But that's sort of like bypassing that people clearly are struggling with this endless choice, or perhaps like I know for myself, like I used to be like way more of a libertine, right? Before I had so many friends die of overdose, before I had so many friends harmed by sex work, before I, you know, watched consumption just sort of rule and ruin people's lives. Like, this idea that, you know, it's the stigma on top of a behavior that causes the harm. The behavior itself may not cause any harm if it isn't for the stigma. Like, I've just watched that like fail over and over again, you know? And so I think that that is like perhaps like why so many people are turning towards like some sort of structure, right? Like the Orthodox and Catholic churches, they seem to ask the most of you. They seem to kind of step in and create, like, I don't know, it's almost like they take out some of the decision making, right? Like, the, you know, it this like rootlessness that seems to be going around that some people are responding to by saying like nothing's inherently bad, like, you know, as long as it is done the right way, go for it, have fun, right? Like, the sexual revolution was supposed to liberate all of us, right? And yet in Louise Perry's book, she talks about how much more pressure young women feel to say no to sex because there isn't sort of this understanding that you don't have sex with someone that you just met. Like, and you're a prude. You're a prude if you don't. There's something wrong with you. Like, it's 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 hard to get into this stuff because it feels like it's so easy for it to be misinterpreted or to be hijacked in some way. But I don't know, there is a way in which I think people are really unsatisfied by this sort of like, you do you, desire is good, you should chase it, you should follow it, fuck it, why not? You know, that's not working, and it's not working for a lot of people.
Well, yeah, so feminism was mentioned, right? And you mentioned, it is good to actually read feminism, and I agree because, it won't take one very long to realize that feminism is not one thing, right? Like it's just such a diverse field, and some of the sharpest critiques of, things in feminism come from feminism. And honestly, like it was interesting for me because it's like if someone asked me like am I a feminist or an anti-feminist, I genuinely would have a hard time answering that question because like the more I learned about it, the more I strongly supported certain factions and strongly opposed other factions. Like honestly, the wages for housework debate is a big one. Like if you look at the wages for housework debate, I won't, get into all that here because like I wrote a thing in it on a Marxism as accelerationism essay, which might be out in a week or two. But there was basically like, three strands really of feminism. There's like liberal feminists, kind of like Gloria Steinem. Then there was Marxists who were just like Marxists, but Marxist feminists, like Angela Davis is kind of poster child for this. Then you had like Sylvia Federici and the wages for housework movement, right? The wages for housework movement had very different solutions to both like the liberals who kind of wanted more childcare and like they thought marriage was bad, female independence, yada yada, like that's more well known. The Marxists kind of thought, you want to childcare, but to this broader goal of like collective child rearing. And the wages for housework movement, which actually, it seems like it overlaps with pronatalist kind of policies of today, but it has actually a very different goal because the whole point was that by recognizing care work as real work and paying women for it, it would simultaneously also be able to kind of have independence through that, right? Like that's also like gives an ability to strike. It also recognizes the vast majority of women as how they actually live, right? Not like this kind of Simone de Beauvoir and Gloria Steinem like existence, which is doesn't represent most people. The sharpest critics of wages for housework came from like Marxists and liberal feminists on the basis that this was going to get rid of this was going to entrench gender roles and that housework is going to be automated, which it's that Angela Davis did say that she really thought like housework was going to be automated. So why would we, pay women to do that? Why would we pay women to do care work when it's going to be automated? I think this, like to me, collective this idea though of like collective child rearing, I would view it as like childcare on the extreme. Because it's one thing to think, okay, your family, like collective child rearing at the level of like a family community. That sounds really natural, right? Like you let your like neighbor or your uncle you trust take care of your kid. That makes sense. But like when we're talking about collective child rearing in an advanced technological society like today, it's essentially the government socializing care work, and that's what the Marxists come out and say they want. And for me, this was a big turning point in me being like definitively like, yeah, I am not a communist at all. Like, I do not believe in this. I'm curious what do you think, Anne, given that you're pregnant right now? If you want me to cut this out or not, Dave, you can feel free. But like, yeah, like I mean, I've heard that it's a stereotype at this point that like people's views on things change a lot when they have children, like at a psychological and biological level. I don't know if you ever even had those beliefs to begin with about like the collective child rearing, but what do you think about that in general?
Yeah. Yeah, I think like for both kind of wages for housework side and the collective house or child rearing side, I think yeah, I just start like I have this sense for like how I want our life to be that I feel like maybe relates back to what I was saying, what I was maybe trying to get at in terms of thinking about the future and actual movements or position. I don't want to just say, oh, positions that we can take, but like examples of lifestyles that we can lead that will actually encourage and inspire other people to live good lives that are rooted in community. It's like, yeah, I want this kind of model of having friends and family to be available and they're like helping us, especially in those newborn stages. And like I hope and I think there will be a handful of people up where we live who will like are gonna step in and create kind of that community. But it's like I don't want my child to be sent off to daycare every day. I want to be near them, as do every parent. If we're not stripped away from this kind of nature, the natural, like you look at any other mammal and the female, especially if they have kids or offspring, yeah. Oh man, they're the ones you need to be scared of. A mama grizzly bear, a mama deer, a mama chicken, like don't come near their baby, don't take their baby away from them. And then we have been so like denatured, and then on the one hand like systemically kind of denatured, on the other hand this ideology of, oh yeah, you're a girl boss if you go to work and just let your kids go here, and it's oppressive for you to be at home being a barefoot trad wife whipping up food in the kitchen. That's so oppressive. You're more than just a baby making machine there to take care of the house. Like we're like those two things going on simultaneously, then yeah, I think more people would be like have to just send their kid to, whether it's daycare or government funded daycare, like whatever that is. And most parents don't want that, even the ones who are like, oh yeah, I have to do this, or yeah, it's fine. Like they'll cry about it. They'll feel literally sad about having to take, especially in the US where our maternity leave is basically non-existent. It's like, no, I want my baby to just be on me for like the first 6 months of his life if possible, because there's so many biological benefits to that. He's gonna have secure attachment, which will then there's all these different things. So on the one hand, it's like, yeah, the collective child rearing, I just think is not realistic, is not in touch with some sort of reality. But that's not to say that we don't want communities that care for kids. I think like on the car ride into town with Kier and Dave, we were talking about wanting to have like trusted adults in our kids' lives one day who they could turn to, or like the freedom of having some parent in the neighborhood who are her kids just say, oh hey, we're going to so and so's, and I just know that they're going to be fed, that they're going to be taken care of, that I don't have to worry about it. I'd be like, okay, come home before dark, like that kind of old, like, oh, we're living in a safe neighborhood where the kids can just go out and play with the other kids, and there's parents and moms on the street who have their eye on the kids. Like kids are kind of the collective care of the community, in the sense that everyone cares about their well-being, without this like, oh, we abolish the nuclear family and we send them to these government paid for daycare facilities so that everyone can go to work. That's on the one hand. And I think similarly, this idea that the housework one is complicated for me, because on the one hand, in the current system where a single income literally is not enough for a family to support themselves, but then we also, like, the right is like, oh, more moms should be at home with their kids, but also aren't like advocating for some sort of increased wages or actually making the cost of housing and living lower. Well, then there either needs to be some sort of UBI for a two parent, or a household, maybe certain number of kids in the family gives you more so that you can afford to have only one parent at work. But is it desirable on the one hand for all housework to be automated? Because we've almost shifted towards that in a sense, especially in like these PMC kind of circles. It's like, oh, I just order Uber Eats for dinner. I'll just buy this Hello Fresh or whatever food subscription service box that's just going to send me all the individual ingredients I need to cook a meal that's individually wrapped in plastic. Sure, that can be convenient, again, especially in like when everyone's busy right now. but it's like the taste of a delicious home cooked meal by one of your parents. Like there's nothing better, especially when you can get organic or has ingredients from the farmer's market or from your farm garden at your house. So there is this like, is it desirable to automate away the stewarding of our homes and the taking care of the space that we are in and the food that we are eating, and to create this kind of like haven in a heartless world? Is that Christopher?
Yeah, Christopher
Lash,
Lash.
right? Like the home being the place that is human, that if it is this traditional, oh, dad goes 9 to 5 work, mom's at home, like I feel like, you know, we're living on a farm. We have this different situation where I get to walk out the door basically and be on at my job and then can come back in. But for a family where it is mom at home, dad at work, like how rewarding would that be as the father or the man in that situation to come home to, like, it does not, I'm not saying all spotlessly clean and he should be mad if she wasn't cleaning all day, but like, oh, she put time into like feeding and nourishing her own body and the kids' bodies and like the family's bodies, and like the space is taken care of. I don't know. I think there is something, again, like grounding about that, kind of in touch with a sort of nature, nurture, natality, like reproducing these beautiful things slowly as opposed to just automating it away. And then at the same time, like, oh, well, then let's just pay wages. Like a stay-at-home mom is now a job. Again, in the current system, that might just be necessary so that there can be stay-at-home moms. But now I don't know, now you're working. Now you're still, like, you're not free. Like, the sense of freedom to just say, yeah, I just get to be at home. But it's not even just the, like, stay-at-home mom mentality. Is such an individualist kind of PMC mode that thinks, oh, well, yeah, it's so oppressive because you just have to stay at home and are a slave to the man and have to keep the house clean. It's like, no, dude, stay-at-home moms were the foundation of our civic life once upon a time. Going to the library and like taking turns reading books or having little kids meetings, organizing PTAs or organizing community events, like the power that lies in that without having to, I gotta do my housework so I can get my paycheck, like totally decoupling it from some sort of capitalistic relationship makes it so much more free and community oriented. And so I don't know if any of what I said was like, I just said a lot of, here's how I think about this and this and this, but that's kind of my view that, yeah, can, like, for Dave and I, just in thinking about cultivating potential and what it means to live the good life and what kind of life do we want for our family and for other families. You know, like in the ideal world, everyone can live in whatever way they want and have the freedom to just have one parent in the household, or to have a parent who is able to like create community. So for the parent that is, say, working a traditional job, there's community and there's community events and livelihood to come back to. And yeah, how can we advocate for that both within our local lives and like inspire and help and influence the people around us at our farmers markets, at our churches, at our schools, at our whatever. And then, yeah, how, like, can we achieve something like that systemically, structurally? Can we defeat the machine to bring back this? It sounds so trad. I sound so trad. Like, but this, like, I would love to be a barefoot mom in the kitchen baking sourdough. That doesn't sound oppressive to me. That sounds fucking awesome. Are you kidding? Like, I was barefoot today planting seeds because my feet were hurting. So how can we bring some of that, like touching ground, touching grass back?
I've never heard Anne say that, by the way. This is me as the husband. This is a live reaction of me hearing this for the first time. I've never heard Anne say anything so trad in my life, but you know,
real liberation is when you work for your boss instead
right.
of your loved ones.
Yeah. Well,
And it's like,
uh,
wasn't the problem with the 50s that like dad was not at home enough? That was a problem, like that was the problem. Dad wasn't home enough. Not that, okay, you know what? Let's like make mom not home either enough, which is what the second wave feminist movement kind of ended up, deciding on, acquiescing into capital at the end of the day. And that's the kind of thing, like a lot of this progressivism is like, profoundly capitalistic and anti-human. That's, yeah,
shock troops
sums
of
it up.
capital, right? I
You were going to say something?
Yeah, I'll just say that on the whole ideal world thing, there would be a lot more support for everyone. Like, I think that's what I think we all want everyone to have more support. Whether that's DIY, direct action, horizontal support, mutual aid, or large scale structural change. We want more support. Everyone wants more support. And we all have this idea that the way that we were raised might not be the ultimate, be the ultimate model for everyone to live by, right? So some of us maybe had a really good upbringing, and maybe some of us who didn't. There's still aspects of it where we're like, well, that was worthwhile. That is worth preserving. And parents being around, I don't think is ever really the problem. I think the problem is like the parents not being around, unless when they're around, they're like these shells of themselves, and they're like alcoholic, abusive, So there's all kinds of ways that a person might say abolish the family, and really, yeah, well, it might tell you a little bit about what kind of a family they come from, right? But then if you want to do the whole rational kernel of abolish the family, which, I've been having a conversation with someone at Theory Underground about this recently. My big problem with it is just the language. As soon as you want to start saying that there is a rational kernel there, because really the nuclear family is like this 1950s like ideal that was sort of made up by advertising agencies, and it has nothing to do with how families actually operate, which is never just nuclear, but always like, no, it's a communal thing, it's a neighborhood thing, it's a church thing, it's a civic society thing. At that point, yeah, of course, but you're saying the term abolish right before the other one, family, and just like that you can't put these two things together. We're not going to do that thing where the slogan then requires all of this explaining to like dig yourself out of the hole that you're already in. I'm sorry. It's just like, if you say so for me, it's my principled thing is just to say, if you really want to have serious conversations with me, we're just going to avoid that language. But then, yes, there is that kernel there, which is just to say, people don't have support. Mothers don't have support. Fathers don't have support. Most of them are, if they're not single parents, it's almost like they are. And so when people have this idea of like, a traditional thing would be like the woman's at home and the man is working. Is she isolated? Right? Does she have to be? And in a world where that guy's not having to work 3 times as much as historically people worked, there'd be a lot more support. And it wouldn't just be like everything falls on her. So yeah, but also I didn't know Anna had ever said that. And so for me, yeah, the ideal, just as far as we go, like, is that we take up where the other person really isn't, that maybe it's like they're not cut out to the task, or they don't want to do it, right? There's all kinds of things that I'm not very good at, and these don't fall on gendered lines at all. And so I am really good at dishes. I'm not really good at accounting. There's these just basic things, and we swap all over the place. But the goal is that neither of us works a job, that both of us just do what we love. And then I think that is the actual good life, right? What's a practical series of steps between living a normal life and then what I just described? For most people, I don't know. And I don't know what kind of a political system would support that either. And I definitely have my skepticism about wages for housework or state daycares, being the thing that would make that happen.
Right. I would say I generally favor solutions that like empower the people themselves as opposed to kind of outsourcing. And and you were mentioning automating, and you said like Uber Eats is an example, and that perfectly reflects like the way in which the belief in automation was actually ended up just being outsourcing like all that work to other people from the third world who migrate here, right? Like that's literally what it is. I mean, if you look at like the vast majority of people in care work, it's migrants from the third world. And yeah, so it's like, yeah, did we really get rid of is this really like is this really progress, right? And yeah, like I think it goes back to time energy as well, like Dave's whole time energy concepts. Like if others have lack time energy, I mean even if you have it, you can't really use it to the same degree. So it's like if all of your relatives, all if your neighbor or your friends are also time energy constrained, it's like there's no space for that community. And I think what Dave was getting at about the rational kernel, rational kernel of the abolishing the family thing is like, well, yeah, the nuclear family already was like a process of abolishing the family in a certain sense, and that was like a degradation of that, of what was the extended family. And many people will recognize this, but I think a lot of people, especially in like on the younger side, or just like anyone really born in I probably born in the last 40 years, doesn't really know what the extended family is unless they have it. So when they think of like what is a solution, it often does end up being like the government fulfilling what should be a civic social function. And it's like, because I really remember I try to like be sympathetic to the abolish the family people and take them at their views, because I was like, okay, are you talking about like what, like I don't know, my Lebanese relatives do or like Italians do, which is like you have these like big families and you can like you have all these like trusted people you leave your kids with or whatever, family friends. But like people like Sophie Lewis, who wrote the book Abolish the Family on Verso Books, which by the way, they were like, they published that, put it on the front, and were afraid to publish Chris Catrone, which is interesting. Um, I actually like, I listened to her interviews and I freaking downloaded her book, and I was like, I really looked through it. I was like, okay, is it like they want to turn us into Brave New World? Like, am I crazy here? And that's kind of like what it is. Like they presuppose social trust. Like they don't realize that social trust has to be pre-existing. You have to like already trust someone to like leave your kid with them, not like a random person. Community is not built overnight, right? It's not something else. They just like assume either it'll happen with a more communist society, or that like it's perfectly fine to just expand daycare into like a collective canteens, and that everyone will take care of everyone's children. And it doesn't account for at all like the fact that we just objectively care about our own offspring more and our own relatives more, or people just in our community more. That's just, there's not, if a friend asks you for a favor, you're gonna be responsive to that in a way that you wouldn't like your comrade on paper who you don't know. Like these are just the biological realities I think we've so striven far away from, and like understanding with all this like social construct theory that people want to say everything is a construct and that means it's not real, right? And yeah, that's how you get this kind of, again, it goes back to the woke politics, which is you just change the minds, we'll fix the problem, you just change the minds, right?
Mhm. I like
Yeah,
hear
there's
what
like
you said during the presentation, then I want to turn it to you during our live presentation about this difference between community versus like the actual public, the people around you, the people in like in your physical community and locale. So yeah, go off, Queen.
thank you. I don't think anyone's ever said that to me before. Um, yeah, no, I think like it's really strange when these projects such as abolish the family, which I won't claim to know much about, but the way that they sometimes end up rhyming with like a hyper individual libertarian approach to things, right? Like part of the reason that we have so many people out on the streets sleeping rough in Vancouver is because we closed like the mental health facilities where people actually lived. And this happened all across North America, right? We decided, oh yeah, community care, that sounds nice. Let's integrate people into the community. And that probably worked for some people, but a lot of people were never going to be able to cut it. Like the reason they were in the facility in the first place is because they needed help, like having 3 meals a day and taking care of themselves at a very fundamental level. And I think like a lot of the promise that we're being sold by the machine is this sort of like frictionless convenience, right? Like we can just tippy tap away. Oh, there's dinner. Oh, like there's daycare, whatever it might be. It's like the like less and less like effort is asked of us. And I worry that we'll become like uh less capable of like dealing with the friction involved in learning new skills and maintaining those skills, right? Like maybe it's counterintuitive, but I think relationships like are built on inconvenience. Like these are the people that will go out of our way for. These are the people that will drop everything to help. Like these are the people that can like interrupt and upend our lives when they're in trouble. And so that friction, that inconvenience, like I think it's gonna be it's gonna be hard to keep choosing that, but I think we have to. And as you said, like the difference between kind of gathering in communities that are built around a shared identity or a shared ideology versus like who's around, right? Like the public is literally just like the other people that I'm sharing space with. And I think like we have to like there's a way in which we're being pushed to like spend more and more time at home, order everything through the app. Like you don't even have to answer the door to grab food from someone and say thank you, right? Like there is like this bubble that we could end up in if we're not careful. But I think that like the real reward is going outside. The real reward is like making things work with other people. I think like the event we put on was such an excellent example of that. Like the quality experience that we had getting to talk with people over dinner is something completely different than a Zoom call.
Yeah, and that I gets at, I think, the one of the words on the poster, one of the kind of framing words of the event is cultivating. I'm like looking at like the Google definition: cultivate, prepare and use land for crops or gardening. But like prepare, the all the the similar words: till, plow, dig, turn. Like this all takes effort. And so if we think about cultivating potential or cultivating community, like all those things that you talked about, the getting up off my couch, and if I'm not wearing pants, I have to put on some pants to open the door to say thank you to the delivery driver. Or like people used to think I was so crazy that I liked to get my um paychecks physically, and I still like to and would prefer to go to the bank and deposit it physically, or I like to go to the post office and buy my stamps from the nice post office attendant and send people virtual thank you cards and send Christmas cards. um yeah, that takes some effort to cultivate land to use for a garden, takes effort all year round. We take all of that for granted when we just order Uber Eats and say, yeah, just drop it off. And then you just kind of open your door and grab it and leave and go back to doing whatever you were doing. Like there is effort and intentionality involved in creating this, yeah, community or creating the life that we want to creating real change. It's not just an easy thing. And I think at the event, if not at the event, just one of the many, many great conversations we were all having with each other, Dave talked about the idea of like, bring it back to, we've been talking about this kind of activism and this leftist activism. There's this sense of urgency and we don't have time. So we just have to go, go, go and do action. And, that loses this slowness or this ability to really think, to cultivate the potential for actual change. And so, yeah, I don't know, Dave, if you want to bring back up just that topic. Yeah.
Yeah, that it's a nice tie-in actually to mining, and actually, here, what's the note about mining, about the companies for all of us who don't know?
Oh, yeah. British Columbia is home to the headquarters of 800 mining companies that operate globally.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like when we think about the kinds of mining operations that happen all over the world, and local people are always like having their local source of water ruined, or it's like a really bad job, and so people are upset about the work conditions, or all of the different, well, it's kind of wild to think about so many of them being based out of Vancouver, British Columbia. And so that was eye-opening. That's obviously related to the whole thing that opened the event. But what I was thinking about here is, if cultivation, both literal as with agriculture, and figurative as with, say, education, if cultivation takes time, strip mining is the opposite. So as opposed to working with the land or working with the people, strip mining you just put a bunch of dynamite, blow it to smithereens, come through the rubble, take what you want, and move on. And of course, it destroys local ecosystems. If it was just a pile of rocks, I wouldn't care too much. But there's rarely such a thing as just a pile of rocks, right? If you actually spend time out in nature, you realize it's all connected, But there's also, more importantly, the water. And if you're polluting the water aquifer, or the river that goes down into a town or a farmland, yeah, you're really messing stuff up. And so Wendell Berry, the father of regenerative agriculture in the United States, was a huge anti-mining guy, even though so many of his peers in the world of farming were like, what's the problem? And so they kind of thought, what are you, some weird environmentalist? And the task that he had for himself, I think, is pretty similar to the task that we all have for ourselves, which is realizing that there's good all around, and that people have good points all around. And that if the environmentalism stuff can go a little far sometimes, there's also something inherently anti-human, as well as anti-nature, about an approach to extraction that doesn't respect the local population's ecosystem. And so when we think about, if cultivation takes time, and that would mean cultivation of world change makers, cultivation of culture within your family and within the children, that cultivating their character, for instance. If that takes time, what would be the mining analogy here? And I just think of the terrible schooling system a lot of people experience. I also just think of the phone habits that people have. This is a form of extraction, like your humanity is being extracted. And so we're not just living in the shadow of the machine is mining us.
Yeah, well, I think in response to that one, I think I almost want to kind of the way that I closed out at the event. I maybe want to turn back to a little bit and just thinking about, yeah, the ways that we are being extracted and exploited and taken advantage of and manipulated and like all the bad things. And we can look at the system, we can look at capitalism, we can look at the duopoly, and we can go like it can feel helpless as like an individual or as four people with big hearts who really care in this Zoom call, or our families, or our little whoever like we're making social change with, or even our churches. Like we can look at that this world. I mean, well, we're not gonna get into this right now, but like all this Epstein stuff is coming out, and it's like
Oh my God.
that can just really make you despair about like how screwed up everything is. And we can give up, and we can go, oh, it's too far gone, burn it to the ground. I think that some of in doing just some digging on like what it actually is in these files, a lot of people will just say, I think we just need to burn the United States to the ground. We just need to burn it all down. Even, people in my life, when it was sometime last year, and there was news coming out that, oh, in the year 2050 or 2060, there's like a 0.00 whatever percent chance that some meteor is going to hit Earth. And they're like, good, do it. Just do it. Just end it all. Like, it's so shitty. Just end it. And so we can fall into that. And even, we can give up. I think in a sense, I have given up on certain modes of change. I've given up on the prospect that voting is going to make this big difference. I've given up on the college students going into college right now. I don't think like their current mode and how they've been set up through their schooling system is the way, blah, blah, blah. We can fall into that. But I'm going to take the position of a little bit of radical responsibility to save our souls. Whether that means you are saving your own soul and you live alone with some cats and dogs and you're giving them the best life possible, or the humanity and the soul of your family or your community, whatever. Like, I think in the face of the machine and the devices that extract from us and steal our attention, and the school system that leaves us just these empty, shallow shells of little kids that used to have a fiery passion for something that got, oh, we have to focus on math right now. As a parent, maybe you have to take some responsibility to, hey, if you got to send your kid to school, well, what can you do after school or at home, or take them to the library once a month to get the resources to give them that spark. And it can be easy to just go, oh, but the system. And that's where, for me, it's like, yeah, and if you do that, you're right. You're valid for just saying, oh, the system, but at what cost? The cost of your humanity, of your health, of your mental well-being. And then there's like this spiritual aspect of your literal spirit, your soul, like, I think there is a sense of some responsibility for whatever little things that you can do to find some joy, or to eat some real nutritious food, whether you grow some herbs on your windowsill, or you buy what you can from the farmer's market, or you even just share news on social media about your local farmer's market or local farm. Like I just think we can't keep falling into excuses and saying, oh, we're being extracted, oh, we're being exploited, and then just give up on trying to make our own lives as good as it can be. And even if we try every day and we fail and it's always harder, like, at least we're trying and there's some intention in, well, I could do this one thing that inspires people, or I could do this one thing that makes my life better. I could do this one thing that like cultivates a sort of passion that I have in my own life. And I think that's where I want to close. And I think like going from this kind of discussion of all these failings of leftist activism and the way that it's been captured by kind of these woke ideas is we have to take a stance, whether it's in whatever way. We have to do something different. We have to. Or you can say up and let your soul wither away and die and like whatever, but like there's no more excuses for doing that. If you care, show up. I'm gonna leave it at that. I could go on. I'm gonna leave it at that.
All what you just said there about like the way in which people often use critiques of the system to just resign themselves from any responsibility, just to or to kind of have this nihilism, it's all gonna burn it all down. It's the system, man. You end up like thinking it's so totalizing that there's nothing you can do. Or you take this like zero sum LARPy like pseudo solutions that I see many people take. Because you know what I think's the worst than people who think voting will solve all the problems? People who think like the opposite, which is like, just like burn it all down, revolution. Because let's be honest, like revolution in terms of how most leftists today take it on as a position is a LARP. Like they're not serious about it at all. It's just a kind of way to, a more sophisticated way to basically express their nihilism and misanthropy a lot of the time, because that's why like there's a communist to third worldist pipeline. They, advocate revolution, but then they don't want to work with people who actually exist, who they live around. So they're like, okay, well, actually everyone in this country is too white and reactionary and too rich. Let's fetishize the third world from, my comfy house in the first world on my keyboard. All of this kind of attitude that we're talking about, like this is why I put my book off for 2 years. It's been very hard for me to complete this book, the Freedom to Change Nothing book, because I really didn't want people to have that as their conclusion. Almost like I want to do everything possible somehow for that not to be how people take it. Because I noticed there was a particular reaction to some of my videos, like the ones where I critiqued US democracy, like inverted totalitarianism or even contained opposition, where some would take it as a kind of, okay, so it's all like fake and gay. Let's just like burn it all down. It's like, no, I really don't want to push people into that kind of mind at all. Like that's not the way. So it's like I want to simultaneously be careful when I do, like as objectively as possible, lay out like, okay, what are the obstacles here? What is the impasse? Because what is not working? What won't work? And I try to explain in great detail why just starting a third party is not going to work in the US. It's been tried a million times. There's structural reasons why that doesn't go anywhere. Your system is very unique. And I try to get into that, but like also like at the end, like what are the paths forward? This is an unfinished part of the book, but it's really about like various different paths, because even that art of like sketching different paths, like different alternatives or different ways, start ranging from like less probable to more probable, is better than just kind of like critiquing everything and then just leaving it up to the reader to come to their conclusion. I think that's kind of resigns responsibility from the author. And I've always been annoyed by this in like leftist intellectual books, is they would be all like critique, but no solution. And as a result, like a lot of people come away with these like pseudo solutions. Like, okay, let's just go to the streets and, channel our anger, or just join a communist party with 50 people and 30 of them are FBI agents. Like, it's just, there's a responsibility that's at some point, like there's an effect that this stuff does have on like the activist mind, or people read this stuff with a desire to change it, not just critique it, but like a critique that doesn't at least point people to something or encourage them to think of before they act. It's going to produce this sort of like burnout, useless opposition, right? So yeah,
I'm really glad we've gotten to this point because I think like cynicism is like very tempting right now. I think a lot of things are pushing us towards like suspicion of the people around us. Um, and perhaps this disavowal where saying like, oh yeah, I know about climate change means you don't have to do anything about climate change. Because like your intelligence alone sort of makes it not your fault or your problem. I think like curiosity and hope and possibility are all very real and they're available to us. And I think Vincent Bevins' recent book, If We Burn, came to an interesting conclusion about like the global movements in the mid-aughts, many of which were kind of consensus-based, horizontalist, you know, uh, types of movements. And what he found was like the places where there were strong pre-existing civil or civic organizations were the places where a sort of spontaneous uprising was able to be channeled into lasting structural change. And the places that did not have that infrastructure flamed hot and burned out quick, and sometimes resulted in a reactionary response that left things even worse than they'd started. And so I think like there's something very real, very crucial, very important about staying connected to the people around us, about being able to connect across difference and being able to like tolerate like the real people around us and not think of ourselves as somehow superior just because we like to theorize on the weekends.
I think that goes really well with the last thing I want to say about post-duopoly, which is just that I think part of it for me, especially recently, is just the realization that people are not usually reducible to stereotypes. And that if you are predisposed towards, this attitude of openness towards change and compassion, sort of universalist empathy, for instance, obviously you're going to go one way. And if you're predisposed towards preoccupation with security, a disposition that prioritizes safety, right, and harmony, you're going to go another way. But that's the problem of the duopoly. That's the problem with the gerrymandering of these types. And so for me, it means like trying to cultivate a sense in myself for both of those things. Those are both part of me. And when another person has doubled down on one of those, that's also part of me. But also, yeah, people are not reducible to these caricatures that the media is shoving in our faces all the time. And that even the caricatures that you see, even at their worst moments, are probably just having their worst moments. And then you're really just seeing that, and that the feed becomes a constant feed of that, right? And so for me, it's like, what does deprogramming the duopoly really mean? And I think part of it just means touching grass, getting out there, meeting people, doing stuff with people from the internet and not, and both. And so, and trying to do so in a way that's not just captured, where it's like, oh, everyone here is a leftist, or everyone here is a Trump guy, or whatever it is, right? And instead trying to get into spaces where people don't feel that way. But then to close out that thought, it's just that, but sometimes a person in your life is just a Trump person. Sometimes a person in your life really, really just thought that it was Kamala's turn. And you know what? That part of me that wants to go, well, bless their heart, is not my best part of me. And so because in reality, it's like, yeah, no, I have a lot of priors, and they're very, very expensive priors. They've required a lot of my time, my energy, and a lot of specialization. And so a person who lacks those priors and is in different networks is going to feel different ways. And that longer term project of being okay with them and being able to associate with them is one thing. And then the other longer term project of cultivating the potential for a new kind of movement. That's like, I think, the more important thing that really brings us all together here. So all right, everybody, thank you for listening so far. Give us some love with a heart, with a thumb up, with a comment, with a subscribe, whatever it is that will keep us popping up for you in the future if you want to see us or hear from us again. Otherwise, the algorithm will bury us and you'll never see us again. We'll get lost in the churn of the slop. That's right. But I have a part we're going to close out with here that I was able to salvage from the original backup recording from my phone at the live event. So I'll let that play here to close us out. Thanks, everybody.
One thing that I want to fit in here as we come to a close, I've been really influenced by thinking about community versus the public, which I think is a Todd McGowan thing. And that's been huge for me because I was for so long involved in and with people that would always talk about community. It's all about community. And we were like so cruel to each other. There was so much backstabbing and maybe that would have been the case in any group I was hanging out with in my early 20s because it's just chaotic to figure life out. But I think there is an important distinction here where the way that the word community gets used is often based on identity, right? The LGBT community, POC, like there's those sorts of groups, whereas the public is based on proximity. It's our neighbors. It's the people that are literally around us. And there is a way in which like our futures are much more tied to each other because we will be affected by whoever gets voted in at the local level, or even just a flood or some other act of God. Like we have, and we don't, the public is almost like the people that we don't choose to be around, right? We don't intentionally go and spend time with them. We just are. We find ourselves among people. And I think that there's something really powerful about caring about that, caring about the public, caring about people that we may not have chosen to have around us, but that we do. I think there's a way in which that allows us to spend some time outside of our echo chambers to get a feel for what are people thinking, where are people at. It's harder to have caricatures of people once you're speaking with them and getting to know them. And I think in terms of, if there's any possibility of large-scale structural change, it will only happen if we are able to connect with and spend time with and find common ground with people with which we also have significant differences.
So we're about to do like this sort of Q&A thing, but we're doing a kind of closing statement thing right now. Is that right? Okay. Well, this has been awesome. And I appreciate it, everybody. And so, what do I want to say in close? Cultivating potential. I think about the human as virtually purposive, right? We're not reducible to our drives. We're not reducible to something like instinct. We're not reducible to our language or our culture or a group that we might be associated with. And we're not reducible to where we've been or to what we've done. We're more than that, right? And that's what I think about when I think of potential. I think of the fact that everybody dies with unactualized talents, undiscovered and uncultivated, under-nurtured talents. And everybody around us has those as well. And so I think about the fact that, people who become through intellectualism or through experience misanthropic, meaning like the hatred of humanity, are often doing so on the basis of empirical observations or abstractions that are abstracted from actual empirical observations. And obviously what's missing there is like what you can't see, right? And so continental philosophy likes to deal with nothingness or negation. Like the fact is you can't empirically quantify what's not there. But with talent, that's exactly what we're talking about. A person who goes to their grave with something that was undiscovered or neglected. You know, I think about someone growing up under apartheid, unable to become that heart surgeon that he wanted to be. You know, this is a real example. You know, Dr. Laubscher from Duquesne University talks about the experience of interviewing this guy who he's growing old, he's going to die, a farmer. But he was forced to drop out of college and go work the fields. And he had a calling that he did not get to pursue. He didn't get to follow it. And that's what we're talking about. People often say like the little Einsteins that are working in the mines, or, you know, well, you know, that's a little extreme. We're talking about people in mines. We're talking about Einsteins. Yeah, well, I'm interested also in the little, maybe not physics or math nerds, but some other kind of potential that's being destroyed by the schooling system, that's being destroyed by the prison system, that's being destroyed by people not being able to do the things that would be required to honor, discover, and cultivate potential. And so what does that mean? For me, it means thinking longer term. It means doing regenerative practices figuratively and literally. Right, figuratively and literally. We think of regenerative farming as a literal manifestation of it, but what does it mean when you're talking about it figuratively? When we get back to the idea of cultivating human spirit, cultivating human potential. And I just think that means a different approach to education that doesn't stultify minds, break spirits, and do so to put people in their place so that they can be instrumentalized towards being a part of the professional managerial class or subservient to it. Really, ultimately, which is what the K through 12 system becomes so often, not all the time, but a lot of the time. And so that's what animates me. That's what makes me feel passionate about doing things longer term. And so that's my main thing, is that I'm not so interested in like who you are this moment. I'm interested in like, what are you trying to become? What are you doing? And how can we help you? And how can we all work together to become something worth striving towards?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I guess in the kind of spirit of what's our call to action here? What should you go do in your life? Well, we don't know what your calling and what your potential is, but I hope that you all at least have something. Maybe you have to think back to your childhood, or maybe there's some book, or maybe you're still discovering it. But I think in the spirit of, cultivating potential despite the machine and everything that goes along with it. Like for us kind of being in this new farming world, a big one problem of the machine is like the food system. Okay, we are still gonna get some stuff from the grocery stores, but what can we do in our lives today or tomorrow or next week or next month to at least help ourselves a little bit, or to help our community a little bit? And so maybe it's you and your friend, or you and your family, or you and your spouse and your kids, or maybe you have some larger role in a larger organization or community. But what are those little things that you can do to, as Kier said, like to find some real joy and some happiness despite the world crumbling around us and everything seeming to be on fire? Like we would say, oh, the world's falling apart, everything's on fire. It's like, yeah, that's true. And yet we go on. Mm-hmm. And yet we find ways to survive, partly for our own sanity, to live a truly good life, but for the future generation, as we've been talking about. That's not just, rah, I'm going to throw some bricks at building and then do some marijuana, like, true marijuana, I guess. Smoke some pot and like, just suffer and not have kids, and why would I bring kids into the shitty world? And maybe that's not your calling, but what are you doing to make your community or the people in your kind of public, in your network around you better? Like, it sounds so corny, but like that you have to do it to save your soul and to hopefully set the future up to actually make a difference, actually have a shot at going against the machine.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Cool.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for coming together on this one so soon after the event. It was awesome. Great to have you all.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Thanks, guys.
If you want to get involved with Theory Underground and access ongoing courses and seminars, as well as a rich and diverse back catalog of courses and seminars that is available to binge on demand once you are a member, then just go to https://theoryunderground.com/subscribe. That's where you can become a member and access $100,000 worth of material for the low price of $50 a month. Or you can go higher, and at the higher tiers access the development workshops in your writing and speaking abilities. Want to learn how to lecture? Or how about write a book? Those are the kinds of things that we're developing ourselves to do in the workshops for the higher tier subscribing members. So yeah, if you're interested in that, the time to act is now. Sign up today. Thanks, everybody.